My name's Renee and I'm a physiotherapist with Future First Physiotherapy, and also have co-developed a persistent pelvic pain program called Nurture through Pelvic Health Ed. I have a special interest in the management of not only persistent pain and pelvic pain, but also other conditions such as dysautonomia, and chronic fatigue and hypermobility disorders, and things that I see kind of go hand in hand. Um, Today, I'm going to be talking about some management strategies that not only are for pelvic pain, but are also for POTS, because it is something that I see a lot of together. We don't really understand the full association between the two conditions, but I think if we look at some of the causes of POTS, it's easy to understand why there would be a link. So some of the known causes of POTS include surgery, which obviously, if you've got pelvic pain, there's a high incidence of having like surgical investigations and procedures. Immune activation, we know there's a large component of immune activity with endometriosis as well. Hormone changes, and then also trauma. So with this in mind, I'm going to start with my first tip. And my first tip is to have awareness and understanding about your autonomic nervous system states. So to start with, well, what is your autonomic nervous system? It's the part of our nervous system that controls our unconscious processes. So our breathing, our heart rate, our digestion, and so on and so forth. Our autonomic nervous system is broken down into our parasympathetic nervous system, and this is predominantly innervated by our vagus nerve. And within this, we have our ventral vagal, which is when we are calm, we're settled, we can be creative, we're really present in the moment. We're getting a release of all our digestive enzymes, and we're getting like repair and restoration happening within the body. The other part of our parasympathetic nervous system is our dorsal vagal, and this is also known as our freeze or fawn. So this is more of a state of kind of dissociation. So you're there, but you're not really present with what's happening. You can kind of feel that kind of numbness, depression, fatigue's also really common. And the other flip side of it is this kind of fawn component, which is this people pleasing. It's trying to keep everyone really calm and happy around you. We know that if you spend long periods of time in this kind of dorsal vagal state, we can start to see a reduction in your metabolic rate. And with that, we start to get increased fatigue. And we also start to see some weight gain as well. The other side of our autonomic nervous system is our sympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system activates when we kind of perceive fear or danger, and we get this release of noradrenaline and adrenaline, and it's known as our fight or flight response. So what happens is we get a really big increase in our heart rate, we get increase in our breathing, we get a redirection of our blood flow. So it moves away from our digestive organs and other kind of non-essential bodily functions to our heart, lungs, and our skeletal muscles. It's preparing us, we need to be able to run, or we need to be able to fight if necessary. We actually also get activation of our pelvic floor muscles. So they've done some research where they put electrodes on different muscles and they get people to watch scary movies. And they've found that the first muscle to activate in response to fear or stress was the pelvic floor. And this obviously has big implications when you've already got pelvic pain. We can also see a reduction in focus, because we actually get a shift away from some of our higher kind of functioning areas of our brain. We can see irritability and anxiety. And again, if we stay in this kind of sympathetic nervous system for extended periods of time, then we can also see issues with immune system dysregulation. And as I kind of briefly touched on with endometriosis, we know there is an association with immune dysregulation within that condition as well. We can also start getting increase in muscle tightness and spasm, and all of this can contribute to pain. So as healthy individuals, we should really move through all these states freely and avoid getting kind of stuck in just one. And we can assess how well we're kind of moving through these states by looking at our heart rate variability. So if we've got a really nice high heart rate variability, then it means we're efficiently adapting to kind of stress and change. If we look at POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, this is a form of dysautonomia. So it means it is a disorder of that autonomic nervous system. So if we're looking at pain and POTS, we also just need to understand that the regulation of this nervous system is really important. So what I would ask you to do right now is have a bit of a think, how do you feel at the moment? What kind of state do you feel that you spend a lot of time in? A lot of the time I'll talk with people and they'll go, you know what, I'm in that fight or flight response a lot of the time. I know I'm just constantly stressed, I'm on the go. Or they'll say, you know what, I'm going through the motions in life, but I'm not actually present. And they're probably more on that dorsal vagal. So starting to have awareness into how we're feeling and which state we're sitting in is really important. If you are feeling like you are getting kind of stuck in one state or another, then there are some strategies which can help. And they include doing some of your diaphragmatic breathing or your belly breathing, because that actually helps to stimulate that vagus nerve. Meditation and mindfulness can be really important. Participating in activities that you enjoy. So we know that when you do things that you like, we actually get stimulation of that vagus nerve as well. And exercise is another really important one. And that's going to lead me into my second tip. So my second tip is that exercise is really important in the management of pelvic pain and POTS. We know there's lots of benefits to exercise, but if we look kind of specifically at these couple of conditions, then some of the big benefits are if you're participating in regular exercise, we get maintenance of our immune system. So it really helps to keep that immune system nice and regulated, which, as I've spoken about, correlates with endometriosis. We get autonomic nervous system regulation, and we get some normalizing of our sympathetic activity. We get activation of our internal opioid system. So that's our internal pain relief system. So that's also really important with ongoing pain management. We see cardiovascular remodeling and increase in blood volume. And this is super important if you've got POTS, because if we can improve your blood volume and your cardiac output, then it helps to bring your heart rate down and normalize your heart rate. We get just, general increases in our muscular strength and our fitness. So that means that our day-to-day activities are just easier to do. It's less taxing on our body and it's less fatiguing. Something that I think gets overlooked a lot is also that exercise helps to reduce our osteoporosis risk. So we actually reach our peak bone mineral density at around 25 to 30 years of age. So if we think about then who's suffering with pelvic pain and POTS and some of these other chronic conditions, a lot of them fall into this same age group. So if you're being limited because of your pain or other symptoms, and you're not really being able to exercise and you're not doing as much activity, potentially you're not reaching as much of a peak in your bone mineral density, which would set you up for an increased risk as you're older of osteoporosis. The other thing is having an early hysterectomy also increases your risk of osteoporosis. So exercise and weight bearing and load through those bones is super important to help reduce that as we get older. And finally, one of the most important ones is it helps to improve quality of life. And I think when we're looking at living with a chronic condition, improving quality of life is really important. Often when I talk about exercise, though, people kind of have that, fear or dread or just really uncertainty. And I get asked all the time, well, what's the best type of exercise? And my answer is always, well, what do you enjoy? If you do something that you enjoy, then what we find is that, one, you're more likely to stick with it because you want to do it. It's something that's valued to you. But also we get that activation and that autonomic nervous system regulation by that participation in something that you enjoy as well. If you've got POTS, then it can kind of add this next layer of confusion of where do I start with exercise? So some of my general advice I would give is you want to start with aerobic-based exercises. You want to be avoiding those high intensity exercises. If you are someone who's already got a really high heart rate, we don't want to be pushing that heart rate too high because you're going to end up feeling really rubbish, and it's not going to be a positive experience for you. It's also important that we include some strength training, particularly of your legs. So those lower limbs, those quad muscles and glutes, they're really important in actually helping with the ongoing management of POTS as well. If your heart rate goes really high with just standing, which is what happens with POTS, then we might need to avoid standing exercises initially. And we might need to start with something like, a stationary bike or a recumbent bike, a rowing machine, or getting into the pool and swimming, because that can just help as your starting point to keep your heart rate down whilst you start to build up that initial kind of cardiovascular remodeling that will occur. It doesn't mean you're never going to be able to do standing exercises again. It's just that starting point to then build from. Um, Other things, can include in making sure you have some water and also like half a teaspoon of salt. So you want about 400 to 500 mils of water mixed with that salt, and consuming it about 1 hour prior to exercise. And that's been found to be helpful as well. I always like to give the disclaimer that if you do have POTS, sometimes when you start exercising in those first 6 weeks, you actually feel a bit worse. You might have increased fatigue. But if you can kind of stick with it for those 6 weeks, regular exercise, at least kind of 4 times a week, then that's when you really start to see those big benefits and the changes. No matter what you're doing, no matter what exercise you're picking, it's all about starting really slow. You want to go right back, start where you can get a win, when you can do something that you can achieve, and then start building up from there. And this leads me on to my third and final tip. So you really want to utilize pacing and graded exposure. So when you're dealing with pelvic pain or other kind of chronic conditions, we can often start to see certain activity patterns. And the first one we call boom and bust. So it's you're having a good day, your pain's feeling good. So you go, well, I'm going to clean all the house. I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to maybe do some meal prep. I'm going to catch up with my friend. And what happens is you do so much in one day that you then end up kind of booming and then having this point of you bust. And you just, you become either really fatigued or your pain becomes really high. So then you have a few days of having to try almost like catch up from that. You need that recovery period where you go, I can't really do very much. I'm kind of doing my bare minimum for a few days whilst my pain or my fatigue settles. And then you go, oh, I'm having a good day again. Now I need to catch up on everything I didn't do on those last few days. And then you do the same thing again. You do too much, you end up flaring up your pain or you become really fatigued, and the same process happens. So then you start having big impacts because you don't know what your day-to-day is going to look like. You don't know if you're going to have a good day or a bad day. And this can just have ongoing impacts. The other kind of activity pattern we see is called avoidance. So, you do something and you go, well, that caused me pain, so I'm not going to do that. And initially, maybe then you start avoiding 1 or 2 activities, but then over time, you're suddenly avoiding 10, 15, etc. activities. And with this, we start doing less and less. It means we become more deconditioned. So then when we do go to do just like everyday activities, it's a lot more strenuous and it's harder for our body. And so we actually become fatigued or we become flared up with our pain much easier. What we're trying to do is find the middle ground, and that's what's called pacing. So I know within the endometriosis community and also with other kind of chronic health condition communities, there's also talk of the spoon theory, which is exactly what pacing is. And it's a really nice way to kind of conceptualize it. So it's about going, well, I have 10 spoons in my day. How am I going to plan my day out so that I can utilize my 10 spoons and get everything done, but without kind of going into a deficit and then becoming fatigued or in a pain flare? It's about, going through and going, well, what's my priority? What are the things I need to do? It's also then looking at, well, what kind of bigger tasks can I break down? So if, cleaning the house would take, almost all your 10 spoons, can you break it down across a week? And so one day you maybe just do the bathrooms. And maybe that only takes 2 or 3 spoons. And then the next day you can do the floors. And then the day after you can do the dusting. Or is it breaking down just, cooking dinner at night? Is standing up for an hour just too much for you? Does it send your heart rate up way too high and make you feel really rubbish if you've got POTS? Or, does it increase your pelvic pain by just being on your feet for an hour continuously? And if so, can we break that activity down into smaller components and spread it out across the day? So that way, by the time you come to that kind of final meal prepper thing, maybe it's only 15, 20 minutes, and then you're sitting down and you're actually consuming your meal. It's also about finding your starting point. Where's your baseline? So in terms of pacing and this graded exposure, we can use this across our day-to-day activities, but we can also use it when we look at things such as exercise as well. So it's about finding, well, where can I start? What can I do where I can manage this without causing either an increase in my pain or really a big increase in fatigue? So if we picked an activity like such as surfing, if you love surfing and that's what you really want to get back to doing, but at the moment, every time you try, you end up in a pain flare, then that's not going to be helpful just to kind of go, well, let's just go straight back to it. What we need to do is we need to start slow. So we might start with walking. And even if that's only 5 minutes a day, that's better than nothing. And then we can start building on that each week by 10 to 20%. As we get better and, we're confident with our walking, we're managing that well, then we might start adding in some more strength training, working on some strength in our arms and our legs so that we have the functional strength and capabilities to go out when we want to surf. Then we might start going, okay, cool, I'm now going to head down to the beach. I'm going to take my board out and I'm just going to go for a paddle, because, I'm then back, I'm in the water. I'm also, getting probably some exposure to some other things that I enjoy, being outdoors in the water. And then as that gets easier and you can manage that, then you might start going, okay, well, I'm going to go surf, but I'm only going to catch 5 waves today. And that can be really hard. Having to stop yourself and change your mindset and go, you know what, I'm going to put a limit on myself can be really difficult. But you go, okay, I'm going to just do my 5 waves and then I'm going to hop out, I'm going to leave. And then over time, you build that up to the point where you can kind of manage to do whatever the activity is without any kind of restriction and limitation. So they're my 3 tips. And I hope that there's something in there that you can take away and apply to your situation and find something to kind of help with you. If you would like to obviously reach out and talk about any of this further, you can get in contact with me at futurefirstphysio.com.au or at pelvichealthed.com. More than happy to talk with anyone and help expand on this, or really help to get people back to doing the things that they love. So thank you for your time today.
That's so good. Well done.
Thank you.